Low riding. One of its mottos is low and slow. And so this marks this subculture as different from, say, I don't know, fast and lifted, for example. Cruising through lowrider culture. All right. Also remind you that one of the goals in talking about these different subjects is to be able to distinguish them from one another. So the difference between a street gang, a prison gang, a lowrider club, and a drug cartel is one of your goals is to be able to distinguish them. All right, there's different ways of explaining what a lowrider is. This is one person's description. It could be any kind of vehicle that is lowered, given a lot of style. It's ridden low and slow. Low riding is about showing off. It's about having, among working class people, it's a way of having pride, you know, having, like, even if you're not financially well off, you could put time and energy into having a good looking vehicle that you're proud of. And so by vehicles, you know, it can include things like bicycles even. And so a lot of teenagers will begin with bicycles and then move on to motor vehicles once they're older. I would argue that these two, or these three, these two are the same. That these two types of vehicles are the most iconic and sought after vehicles in lowrider culture. These are referred to as bombs. They're basically vehicles from the late 30s and 1940s. And it could be of any make. It doesn't have to be specifically say a Ford or Chevy. It just has to be from that period. And have this, from that period, they have this shape. So that would be one. These are two examples of that one that are referred to as bombs. And then the other is in a Chevy Impala, especially from the early 60s. And especially convertible. So I'd argue those are the two most sought after, most iconic lowrider vehicles, the bombs and the Chevy Impalas. Here's possibly the most famous Chevy Impala. It's a lowrider from Los Angeles, referred to as the Gypsy Rose. A lot of times lowrider vehicles have unique names. This Chevy Impala was popularized by a TV show from the 1970s, I think it was, called Chico and the Man. Maybe even 1970s, Chico and the Man, where the opening credits included a scene of the owner driving the Gypsy Rose. And a good example of what lowriders are like and about. The idea is to have it as clean as possible. Freshly, you know, painted, spotless. Everything is either chrome or paint. Yeah, at least all the exterior is either chrome or paint. And so, yeah, lots of chrome and lots of paint. And then in this case, the artwork is a lot of pinstripes, where someone hand makes all these little designs. And it's about customizing. It's about making a vehicle your own like nobody else's. And so you're expressing your identity with it. Custom upholstery of the interior. You know, this one has like these mini chandeliers, a mini bar, you know, everything custom upholstered. Another example with murals on the sides, the pinstripes, the chrome. This one has a casket inside the vehicle and custom bucket seats. Here's some bombs with murals airbrushed into them. You can see some of their inspiration and things they associate, you know, from Aztec history to pachucos, or a conflation between pachucos and Italian mobsters of the 1920s. And there's different levels of lowriders. There's lowriders where people, you know, drive them up and down the street and go cruising. And then there's competition lowriders that are taken to car shows where they compete with each other. And those vehicles, they don't drive them around, especially the ones that are real competitors. So, for example, this has so much chrome and paint. Even the underneath hoods, it's painted. Underneath the vehicle is all chromed. Hence, they put mirrors underneath to show off even the bottom of the vehicle. This also introduces us to, you know, the people that are active with lowriding and lowrider car clubs are mostly people of working class backgrounds. And so, yeah, many of them, you know, don't go to college, didn't go to college, for example. And so, you know, they make mistakes in terms of, like I mentioned, conflating history. You know, the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, for example, easily get conflated as if they were the same thing or all alike. And then the other thing is, you know, you do find a significant amount of kind of misogyny, you know, objectifying of women and that sort of thing. So it's not without its problematic aspects. This one kind of like a transformer with pyramid, custom pyramid bucket seats, suicide doors that open backwards, murals underneath the hood, and just everything. In this case, not only chromed, but also gold plated. Now, it not only street gangs identify their origins with pachucos of the 1940s, lowriders do as well. And that, again, because in the 1940s, there was a split between the pachucos who wanted to get away from the street gangs and did so by getting a job and focusing their time and energy into lowriding. And then those that embraced the more street gang aspect of it. And so that takes us toward the other avenue that I talked about in the previous lecture with street gangs and then the creation of prison gangs. But they themselves see themselves as very different from street gang members, even though they both look at pachucos in the 1940s as, you know, the same point of origin. Again, murals on the side of bombs, you know, kind of zoot zoots and jukeboxes, kind of a conflation of different decades. Here is one that is dedicated to Chavez Ravine. If you recall, Chavez Ravine was that place where this ethnic Mexican neighborhood got letters from the city telling them they had to leave. And they were promised that they would be able to move back there as soon as they built new housing, affordable housing. Here's the Arechiga family being dragged off, the last ones in Chavez Ravine. And then here's Walter O'Malley, who Chavez Ravine instead ended up going to for the building of Dodger Stadium. And so, just another good example of the differences, between people just wanting to have a cool car to people kind of maybe not so well informing themselves about Mexican American history. And in this case, very well informed, very well grounded, dedication to that neighborhood. And again, any kind of vehicle can be turned to a lowrider. Here's an ice cream truck. And yeah, inside and out. And again, without its problematic objectification and conflation between zoot suiters of the 1940s and Italian mobsters of the 20s and 30s. Car clubs. Car clubs are what organize lowriding. And it's very common to have a plaque in the rear mirror, the rear window with the name of their car club, such as Viejitos or Old Memories. There's an expression, someone's quote talking about how important these car clubs are to them. They're there when you need them. They help you, fix up your vehicle. They're there in times of need with your family. And so, it's positives of being in the club. They do tend to be disproportionately a kind of male-led and male participating, but that doesn't mean that there aren't that lowriding isn't popular among women, or that there aren't women owners, or that there aren't all female car clubs even. But they certainly are not the majority and have not gotten a lot of the attention. These car clubs, when people see them, like, if we see this guy, he could look like a street gang member of his time and place. But again, the car clubs, it is very common for car clubs to not allow any active street gang members to become members of their car clubs. They invest a lot of their money into these vehicles, and they don't want to draw problems to their vehicles. And when they have social events, they also want to bring their families and not invite trouble to those family gatherings. It's super common for them to do fundraisers for good causes. And so, yeah, they very commonly explicitly prohibit active street gang members from joining. That doesn't mean they won't allow former active street gang members to join as part of what lowriding has been about from the beginning, is helping youth get away from from juvenile delinquency and crime. And so they do continue with trying to help people get out of that or get away from that. The Duke's Car Club is one of the oldest ones. Among the founding members were members of the original Sleepy Lagoon defendants from 1942 and 43. Lowriding is not exclusively Mexican American, but Mexican Americans have been doing it the longest since the 1940s. It is very common, and there's no, how do I put it? They're very welcoming of everyone participating in lowrider culture. In this case, this guy is Samoan, which is Pacific Island. Lowrider magazine played an important role in the repopularizing of the lowrider subculture in the 1970s. There's the Gypsy Rose again. You know, there's the objectification of women. This one is from the 1990s. And so, yeah, started in the 70s. And then, yeah, and then 20th anniversary in the 90s. Different covers. This has become a well-known symbol of Lowrider magazine. Kind of just a guy with shades and a hat and a little mustache. This is just showing how it came to that. It originally had to do with the magazine costing $1, and they just kind of turned it into a figure that evolved. Again, these seeing their origins with the bachucos of the 1940s and the vehicles of that time, the bombs. And in the 1980s, there was a movie called Boulevard Nights. Now, this movie, you know, doesn't do what I want you to do, which is, you know, distinguish between street gangs and lowriders. This one kind of conflates them, but those movies from 1979, Boulevard Nights.
The homeboys know that everything happens on the boulevard, and the boulevard happens at night.
One thing I'll mention about that clip, that trailer, the clip of the trailer I played for Boulevard Nights, is that movie. What was it? I think the script was written by a Japanese man, and that'll come into play later when I talk about the participation of Japanese people in lowriding and other parts of the world. But there's a long-standing connection between Mexican American lowriders and Japan. Before that, I'll show you a music video of a Chicano rapper from Southern California, kind of talking about just this subculture.
Feeling good, right? I'm feeling good now. I'm good in the neighborhood. And fine. I feel all right.
Chevy Impala. Polishing the chrome. This is Northern California. Hydraulics. So a little bit of history there. They with lowriders, they would lower them, but then the police would try to outlaw them. So they passed laws that said your vehicle couldn't be lower than a certain number of inches off the ground. So then they put in switches so that when they're driving or when they see the police, they can just raise the vehicle and no longer be, violating the laws that are targeting them and criminalizing them. I have a nephew in Los Angeles who's one of the leaders of a lowrider kart club, and they're called the Lolos, and they specialize in this kind of vehicle, where most of them are that type. That's the 3-wheel, the lowrider bicycles. Or 7 Impalas. The first one, is either cruising, possibly a parade. Here we're more at a car show. A lot of these vehicles, people won't drive them. They are, they're competing. Or they drive them super little. Police car. And parts of the engine are chromed or gold plated. It's wild. There's a parade in the Bay Area. See the hopping? They have hop contests. Although now they can hop them like ridiculous. Like now they make them stand up practically like just, they just have something built in so they don't flip back. But yeah. Hop contest, bicycles. And like I mentioned, there were lots of laws passed to try to criminalize them. One of them was not being able to have a vehicle be too low to the ground. Then they started coming up with no cruising laws. For example, here, Los Angeles, there was this place where it said you couldn't pass 2 times on the same location within 6 hours. So that means if you drive to the store, shop for 2 hours and drive back home, you could get pulled over and get a ticket for cruising. So, but again, all these ways of criminalizing activity, making crimes of people's culture, of what they do. And fortunately, California decriminalized lowriding just over a year ago. But for decades, it was criminalized because there were certain places like Boulevard Nights. It was Whittier Boulevard where people go cruising. In South Central, people go to Crenshaw. In Huntington Park, it was Pacific Boulevard. There are all these places where people would get together to cruise, especially on Sunday evenings and or when there were big events. And yeah, they would put up these signs to prevent it and criminalize them. Then there's international influence. These are 4 places I'll talk about. I already mentioned Japan, where Boulevard Nights was in part created by a person from Japan. There is a Japanese version of Lowrider magazine, as well as other magazines. In fact, I'm not sure if this one I bought it when I went to Japan, or if I found this online. No, it's probably too old for me to have bought it. Anyways, but yeah, you could see some of their, and here there's also a lot of conflation between street gangs and lowriding. The gang signs, the bandanas, the colors, the hairnets. This picture I took when I went to Japan, it was at a hip hop store, and they had a Virgin of Guadalupe t-shirts. And I think this I scanned from the magazine that I bought over there. And yeah, you could see, I don't know, like Raider stuff, Mexican flag, 13s, LA. Felix the Cat is associated with this. I don't know how many of you have heard of Felix the Cat, but it's a cartoon, old cartoon, but it's associated with lowriding because Felix the Cat was associated initially, like it started off as being the mascot of a car dealership in LA. And then it became this popular cartoon, but it's still associated with that car dealership, and so close to downtown LA. And so Felix the Cat is one of the symbols of lowriding as well. Interesting connection again with Japan. There's all these rappers that are influenced by Mexican American rappers. So I'll show you some examples here. So this is a Japanese rapper who calls himself El Latino. And this is I think JP is, I think he was Mexican born, but raised in the US, in LA. He does his rapping all in Spanish. He's from South Central LA. And so this guy's rapping in Japanese with occasional words in English. Other example. Sorry. I lowered it on YouTube, but this is some other site. So again, they're rapping in Japanese. And then they brought in Kid Frost, which is one of the best known Mexican American or Chicano rappers. Another one. She calls herself Mona and also Sad Girl. Sad Girl, so Mona kind of means like doll. And Sad Girl would be like an example of a popular Mexican American female street gang member name. They got the Lowrider Car Club flags. The name of this club is Primera, which is the name of the street gang in that movie I mentioned, Boulevard Nights. California on the hats. This guy in Japan showing off, explaining his tattoos. That's a Mexican American style of tattoo, that the Aztec warrior, pyramid, the Pachuco tattoo of the cross. Area code 058. All right, those were examples from Japan. Then I'll show you some examples from Spain. This is from a hip hop store in Spain that a friend of mine took. You see the Lowrider bicycles, the Virgin of Guadalupe, kind of the Raiders inspired gear, the Lowrider emblem I mentioned earlier. Esteban Oriol art photographs here. He's the one that photographed that, how do I put it? Who photographed that, the hand signal of LA that people still use a lot. Yeah. Right. Oh, what else? All right, Brazil. Here's a trailer of a film or documentary they were creating called South American Cholo. Hopping, the Virgin of Guadalupe. LA hats. Esteban Oriol, the guy with made that famous. States South Central. North Side Bike Club, the Lowrider Bicycles. Gonzafos CS is a popular thing to spray paint or tag from the Chicano movement. New Zealand. Inglewood. All right. So this is Fernando Ruelas is the owner of the Gypsy Rose. And so, you know, just again, being an important part of people's identity. Low riding. It's more than a hobby, something integral to who they are.